Hey guys, thanks for joining me on Eat, Pray, Love today. Today I wanted to talk about gut pain or gut troubles in eating disorder recovery. So I'm going to be honest and say when I first became a dietitian, I had absolutely no idea that asking people how their bowels were moving was going to be a question that I ask multiple times a day. And I definitely can acknowledge that sometimes I still forget when I'm with a client I haven't met before how easily I'm willing to talk about their bowel movements and how kind of standoffish they might feel about that in the first instance. But over time, everyone begins to understand the relevance of this in recovery. And many of us will actually have noticed some of our own physical changes when we are living with an eating disorder or when we start to try and re-nourish our body. So I guess in my first consult with people, when I'm asking about what's been happening to their bowels, a lot of the time people will say that they are feeling quite constipated. And the reason for that is our gastrointestinal tract is a muscle and it relies on kind of regular doses of nutrition in order for our body to be able to get that muscle moving things through and also for that food to have enough substance to it or fiber to it in order to actually create a stool. So if you've been consistently undernourishing or undernourishing and then I guess overnourishing sometimes if we're engaging in binging or if we're purging and removing that food from our body, that is really going to affect how that system is able to function day to day. So it is really expected for people to experience constipation. So from this, what can happen when you're feeling constipated is we can feel quite bloated and our stomach might feel quite firm. And this is sometimes as a product of fecal matter building up in our body that we really haven't been able to pass. As we begin to refeed, or re-nourish, so as we start to introduce more food into the diet, your dietitian will essentially be asking you to eat more regularly and eat more food overall. So what this does is it starts to kind of get that muscle moving again. But we can experience kind of a bit of a delay in the function coming back to normal. So again, I use the muscle analogy in that if our gut is like a muscle or like any other muscle, say I am no longer as strong through my arms and then I start training again, I'm just really not going to be as strong and as good as maybe I once was if I have a history of kind of training that part of my body. So we can kind of experience this like delayed onset of your tummy functioning properly. And in that process, we will experience what's called early satiety. So when you eat, you might feel full quite quickly from that food. Now this is super confusing in the context of an eating disorder because you're eating whatever percentage of the meal and then your brain's telling you, well, you're feeling full in your stomach, so that is surely enough. But often it's actually a really poor indication of whether or not you've eaten enough food. So it's like our stomach is unable to stretch as much as it used to be able to. I also think of it as if you're blowing up a balloon, and you know when you get to that first bit of blowing up a balloon and there's like a kind of like hard pressurized bit at the start, and you've got to kind of give it a good burst of air to get past that, and then it stretches quite easily. It's almost what is happening to our stomach. And at that point, when it's kind of smaller, we get all these fullness receptors that fire, which tells our brain that we are full when we maybe have in fact still not eaten enough food for re-nourishment. So that's something that when I'm working with my clients, I'm often saying to them like, yeah, look, it's probably going to suck. You're probably going to feel pretty full, but this is actually part and parcel of the process and it will get better with time. The other thing that can come from that is as we start re-nourishing, we can experience some bloating and even some nausea throughout the process as well. And unfortunately, the best advice is persistence, because we need to see if that was as a result of undernutrition. So being able to follow your dietitian's meal plan of eating regular balanced meals and learning how to tolerate that fullness. And what we most often see is that over time it gets better and it subsides. And you may need some support from the people around you to tolerate the fact that your brain is telling you I am full, which means your eating disorder starts yelling at you, telling you do not eat beyond that, and you're kind of really trying to stick to what your dietitian or what your family or psychologist has told you needs to be done meal to meal. I often recommend using a hot water bottle after meals, or using some form of interactive distraction. So whether it's playing a board game with your family, watching your favorite TV show, something that's really engaging, because it can help, I guess, take our focus away from that sensation of fullness. And another thing that I always remind people is that fullness is not fatness, and fullness is a sensation that will pass, because our eating disorder will do a very good job of trying to convince us that if we are full, it therefore means that we are gaining weight. And it is actually impossible to gain weight from one specific meal, despite how our mind might make us feel about that. So good news is it passes. Bad news is I'm really sorry. It's kind of part and parcel of the recovery journey, but know that it is really, really normal. There are certain things you can do to make it easier depending on your individual circumstance, but that's why I really recommend that you work with a dietitian who knows what they're doing in this space, because there's lots of ways we can kind of tweak what you're eating to make it a little bit more comfortable on your stomach in the short term, but you will always need to return to having an adequate diet that is well-rounded and balanced in terms of nutrients and food groups as well. So I really, really encourage you to share this with your friends who are also pursuing recovery, or maybe even with your friends and families, so they can help understand some of the pain that you might genuinely be feeling. Because I think from an outsider's perspective, we don't always realize that some of this fullness and this early satiety is a genuine part of recovery, and it is actually quite distressing. And I also would love you to subscribe and like and comment and do all those kinds of things that help get this video seen. Check out my other videos. Pretty much everything I'm posting is going to be about eating disorder recovery in some way, shape or form. And I really would love you to send through some topics as well, because I'm constantly looking for ideas. So thank you very much, and I'll check you next time.